Good evening and welcome to the November 13, 2012 regularly scheduled meeting of the Rossmoor Community Services District. Ms. Deering, may we have a call to order?
Director Casey?
Here.
Director Kaler?
Here.
Director Maynard?
Here.
Director Rips?
Here.
President Coletta?
Here. And would you please join us as we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have no presentations, no additions to the agenda. I'm going to move this board at this time to go into closed session. We have a necessary material participant who's district counsel who will be joining us in closed session. So I'd have a second on that request.
Second.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
All right, none opposed. We're going to go into closed session and we'll reconvene momentarily.
Mr. President, members of the board, it's appropriate to indicate that your first closed item is public employment appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, titled District General Manager, and 2, conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code 54957.6, agency designated representative Alfred Coletta and Michael Maynard, unrepresented employee, prospective general manager.
All right, thank you. Those are the two items. We'll go in closed session. We'll reconvene momentarily. All right, we're back on the record. It's now 7:25 approximately.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight at approximately 7:05, the board convened in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. The board discussed two items on the agenda and no reportable action was taken.
All right, now we move to public forum. Anyone wishes to address the board concerning matters within our jurisdiction, please come forward to the microphone. Give us your first and last name. I believe there's a tablet, Ms. Deering, is there, or something for them to write their nname?
Yes, there's a sign-in sheet.
There's a sign-in sheet, if you're pleased to do that. If not, then we'll proceed to the next matters, and that is our reports to the board. Mr. Taboada?
Mr. President, members of the board, the audit committee met and discussed the draft audit provided by RAMS, the accounting firm employed by the board to do its annual audit. The committee reviewed both the report and the management letter and the management response to that management letter. Here tonight you have Mr. Terry Shea and Mr. Brad Wilbur of RAMS, who is here to make a presentation on their findings in the audit.
Welcome. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. My name's Brad, and we're going to start off going on the independent auditor's report, which is what's up on the screen, and that is on page 1 and 2 of the financial statements that you have in front of you. This independent auditor's report is what we refer to in the profession as an unqualified opinion, meaning that we have no qualifications to the report. It's the highest level of assurance we can give on a set of financial statements, and that is to say that we have performed our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, and the report is in compliance with governmental generally accepted accounting principles. I had an opportunity to meet with members of the audit committee a few weeks ago, Mr. Coletta and Mr. Maynard, and we went into detail through the entire report, every page, all the different numbers. So I'm not going to take time to go through those numbers now, but if any of you have any questions, we're more than willing to answer any of those at this time before we go on to the other two items that we have to present.
Well, let's proceed to the other two items, and we can always come back.
Sure. What's the next one you have?
Good evening. My name is Terry Shea. I just want to thank the district staff for the help they gave us. What you have in front of you now is called a SAS 114 letter, and there's two communications to the board that are required. The first one was back in May, and then this one. And it starts out with significant audit findings, and then the qualitative aspects of accounting practices. And management is responsible for selection and use of the appropriate accounting policies. The significant accounting policies used by this district have not changed. There were no new policies adopted this year. And we noted no transactions entered into by the government unit during the year for which there is a lack of authoritative consensus, and all significant transactions have been recognized in the financial statements in the proper period. Also, accounting estimates are used, and your biggest estimate is the depreciation on all your infrastructure. On page 2, the top part is difficulties encountered. We didn't encounter any difficulties in performing our audit or dealing with management. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements. I think we had a few journal entries, but every entry we found, management was okay with, and those entries were corrected. We had no disagreements with management. We requested and received a management representation letter from Henry. We didn't consult with any other independent auditors and other audit findings. We had no other audit findings. And then there's the last sentence there says, there's other stuff in your financial statements which we referred to. Basically, it was very clean audit. Management was very helpful and forthright. Any questions regarding the SAS 114 letter?
Doesn't appear anybody has any questions at this point.
Okay, the last letter that we have here, this is our communication to the board and management. We're just calling this a management letter. During our audit, we became aware of some information that we felt was useful for the board. This is not to report a material weakness or a significant deficiency in internal controls, which we would have been required to present to you had we come up with those things. But this is just an item that is of benefit to the district, we believe, to provide some information about something that came up during the audit having to do with administrative fees related to the Series 1993 Rush Park bonds. And I've had a chance to meet with the audit committee to go over this. Management has also provided a response to our finding and our recommendation, and management agreed with the recommendation, and the audit committee as well with that. So we don't need to go into detail of that unless you have any specific questions. This relates to potential accounting treatment of future special assessment revenue in the next fiscal year. So it doesn't in any way affect the audit report that you have in front of you.
So in order for you to do the techniques you describe in terms of moving some monies from one fund to another, we could not have done that without this movement of funds. On page 447, in items 1 and 4, I was just questioning if we had to do the movement of funds in order to affect what you have in mind.
Mr. President,
clarify page 47, which number are you?
Brad, that's the management response. The one,
okay. So
page 2 of your.
Okay.
That's the details of what you're discussing.
Sure, under management's response.
Correct.
What we're talking about in this recommendation has to do with the next fiscal year and the years looking forward. All the transactions that have occurred up to June 30, 2012, which we did our audit on, have been properly reported in the financial statements. So this is something looking forward, and these things, yes, they could be done in the future, in the next fiscal year. Is that what you were asking?
It was more along the lines of you were moving monies from fund to fund in order to affect
Sure.
what you were looking for in terms of some of these benefits.
Right.
So it was just cleaner to do it that way. Not being an accountant, I didn't totally understand the machinations that were going on.
It was something that came up it started in what's indicated in the letter, if we go back about 2 or 3 years, where management and the board asked us to do some additional agreed upon procedures to look into the way that the Series 1993 bond administrative fees had been handled. And during that procedures, we determined that no bond administration fees had been recovered by the district to be the agent for those for that debt since 1993.
Yep.
So starting in 2010, they started to take the administrative fees for 2010, 2011, and now in this audit, 2012. That's just 3 years, but you were allowed by the bond to do this ever since 1993. So it just so happens that next year, based on the way that the timing of the special assessment revenues that come in and the timing of the debt service payments having to do with the early payment of the debt that the board had authorized a year and a half ago, that it's going to create a cash flow position where it will allow the district to have the funds to be able to recover the administrative fees that could have been charged in the past. Now, you have that ability to now, but not all of it. So in what our recommendation is that you are now able to recover all the way back to 1993 what could have been and possibly should have been, at the board's discretion, take an administrative fee for the costs that were incurred for dealing with compliance and making the payments and so forth. And then part of the audit that we do is to cover those funds for the fiduciary debt. So that was what we're making a recommendation looking forward, that you have an opportunity because of the timing of the cash flows that you can take care of this item for all of the retroactive administrative fees that could have been charged since 1993 and be done with it and just move prospectively until the debt is paid off.
No, that's great stuff. I guess we didn't do it, obviously, because we just weren't aware we had that ability until you pointed it out.
Right. And it just became feasible because of the timing of the cash flows. I mean, you could have recovered some of it, but based on the action that the board took to early pay off the debt, it has changed the debt schedule such that it's going to create this one-time increase in cash flow that's going to allow you to be able to recover that. So you can recover this retroactively back to the 1993. So it's essentially, the annual amount from 93 to 2009. You can do this all in once and then be done with it and then just be moving year by year.
Mr. President, members of the board, I believe Director Casey is looking for a procedure to get to where this recommendation goes. Board policy requires that the board approve any transfer of money between funds. So what I would be contemplating is having a meeting of the budget committee prior to the mid-year budget adjustment to deal with all of the budget adjustment issues, and then ask that budget committee then to implement the recommendations of the auditing firm and that I support, and ask you as part of the mid-year adjustment to make those changes from fund to fund, and that would take care of it once and for all. So it would be just part of your budget adjustment process.
That sounds like a good process.
We did something comparable a year and a half ago.
Correct.
Yeah. Good enough. Very good.
Any questions?
Any questions on any of the items? Thank you. Okay, we appreciate the opportunity to work with the district, and thank you for your time.
We thank you for finding what you did.
Mr. President, I'd also like to thank Ms. Kathy Bell, who's not here tonight because she's not feeling very well still, but she did an excellent job in providing all of the documentation requested by the auditor's firm, and I'd like to pass along the board's acknowledgement of her work, and hope she has a speedier recovery.
I wish her well.
Indeed.
So this is the report that we're going to receive and approve. Is there a motion for an approval of this recommendation this evening, irrespective of no actions being taken?
So motioned.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No one opposes. Motion carries.
Mr. President, the recommendation was to receive the audit report and to approve the annual audit report and approve the recommendations contained in the management letter if you choose to do that prior to a budget committee meeting. You can give it tacit approval or just give me an indication that you want me to proceed with that.
All right, would someone like to make an additional motion to add the additional clause?
I'm actually a little confused what you're asking for, Mr. Tabawada.
Sir?
I don't quite understand what you're asking us to do right now.
I explained the process as to how we do it procedurally, but I want some indication from the board that you have a comfort level with going forward with the recommendations of the audit committee and my support of those recommendations.
I would support it. Can we just tell them we support it?
Yes, we can. We can do it by formal motion, whatever the
No,
board.
no, I'm just looking for,
Correction.
All right, I'm going to make the motion that we adopt as well the management letter and the recommendations that are within the letter. Is that sufficient?
yes, sir.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Anyone wish to discuss it further?
Nothing further.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No one's opposing. That too is carried forward. Now we move to D2, the tree report on our parkways. Mr. Topwater?
Mr. President, members of the board, we've been working on this item for several months, in fact, probably a couple of years. As part of the survey of the urban forest, Mr. Randy Reynolds determined that there were 21 sites where a tree could not be planted. And so we attempted to work out an MOU with the county that would give us joint responsibility for dealing with parkways so that we could then take care of those issues and plant trees where trees previously could not be planted. Of course, the county came back and said they could not give up their responsibility for that, but said that they would work with us to clear those sites and to make them available for tree planting. We then petitioned the county on those sites, and we reduced the number from 21 to 19 based on a determination that the sites were not appropriate for a tree based on various reasons. Not every front yard or front parkway is suitable for a tree because of water lines, gas meters, utility poles, etc. As part of that 19, we then sent letters to each of these residences and asked them, basically advised them that we had intended to plant a tree and that if they had an issue with that they could appeal to the board. Four of those residences did appeal to the board, and those appeals were denied by the board. So then we asked the county to make available each of those 19 sites. They agreed to clear all of the sites except those where there was an appeal and that the resident did not want a tree planted. And they're in the process now of clearing those sites. So we will soon be able to plant trees in a majority of them, at least, I guess, 15 of the 19 that will be made suitable for planting. The question then remains is, what is the next step for the board with regard to those sites where the county says they will not plant a tree or clear a site where a resident objects to the tree planting? Moreover, as part of the same survey, Mr. Reynolds determined that there was, I think, 13 to 20 different sites where a tree had never been planted, even though there was no physical obstacle to tree planting, but where the resident had said that they would not take care of the tree, they would object to it, they would kill the tree, they would do any number of things that in order to make sure the tree did not survive. That's the next, I think, the next segment, if you will, of getting to the goal of the board by policy, which is to have a tree in every front parkway. So it may be that we should consult with general counsel and get some ideas of the options available to the board, particularly with the sites that the county says they won't touch, and then move on to the rest of those sites where the resident simply says, I don't want a tree. But at least I'm able to report to you that progress is underway and we'll be soon planting trees in at least 15 of those sites. That's my report, sir.
All right, then, seeing no comments, I presume this is just going to be received by the board. There's no comments, questions?
Well, do you feel you need direction at this time about getting council involved about the 4 sites where the county will not take any action in terms of the trees because of the objections?
Well, those 4 sites in particular, and the other sites where we just simply had residents who said, no way, I don't want a tree. So it's you know, they're the two parts of the same issue. I think we need general counsel's input as to how we go to the next step to enforce the district's policy. And that's easy enough to do for me to ask general counsel to provide the board with his advice on the next steps.
Well, since we're stymied, I believe we should take that next step and approach council for advice in terms of what they think we should do next.
Well, I agree, because it is your policy, and I'm trying to make sure that
Right.
people adhere to it.
Is there any reason why we can't come back next month with some advice from district council on this?
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, we can surely do that, sir.
Moving forward, how often do we update the list of homes that don't have a tree?
Well, WCA maintains a file of every tree in Rossmoor, and they've maintained that file for billing purposes, so that when they trim or remove or do whatever to a tree, that list gets updated automatically as a result of that. The survey we took was to determine the health of the urban forest, whether the trees were dying, diseased, compromised in some way. So the combination of the two resulted in information as opposed to just a data list from WCA. We got a data list that gave us an idea of the health of the urban forest. And so we're working off of that list. And that list will change as trees die and as people, don't take care of a tree or whatever. But we're constantly working now with the county on every tree removal, we're following up on the tree trimming cycle. During the tree trimming cycle, West Coast Arborist informs us if they find trees that need to be removed because they're diseased or compromised. So it's just an ongoing process, and that's where our tree consultant then keeps tabs on all of that and keeps me and keeps you up to date as to what's going on.
All right, then I would request that we bring this matter back next month for the December meeting with some options for this board. And we'll leave it up to you and council to put together a briefing.
I'll agendize that for you for your next meeting.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay. All right, then let's move on then to the next item, which is our governance issues on D3.
Mr. President, members of the board, agenda item D3 is a report on governance, and we're asking you to provide me with any direction on future governance initiatives. This report is basically an update to my memorandum of October 9th, which I provided to you and is now included as part of this package, which brought you up to date on where we were as of that date. Since that time, district staff has met with representatives of the Sheriff's Department and reviewed a preliminary cost proposal for providing police services on a contract basis. Staff has asked for refinement of the proposal based on calls for service and statements on corresponding benefits derived therefrom. A log of the 2008-2011 calls for service has been provided and is attached. The revised cost proposal should be finalized in a week or so and will be based on the Sheriff's Department's assessment of coverage suited to the needs of Rossmoor. You will note when you take a look at those statistics on past statistics on overall crime for the community of Rossmoor, that while there has been a slight, and I mean a slight increase in overall calls for service, it has not been a dramatic increase. What we've experienced, I think, recently are those situations that have been very public and very noticed by the community. And so there is, I think, a much higher degree of awareness in the community that there are issues with burglaries and other crimes which are affecting the community. The information, I think, is very helpful in evaluating a cost of service proposal from the department. The preliminary proposal that we reviewed basically was a very basic plan, and is based on what is the normal service level for county unincorporated areas, which is what we already have. So that we've asked them to come back to us with additional services that would enhance public safety within the community. And let me go on to the Public Records Act request and maybe come back to the issue of where we are with.
It's on.
Sounds like it isn't. Where we are with regard to moving this process along to a request for latent powers from LAFCO. With regard to Public Records Act request for county financial data, Mr. Fred Brousseau of the Harvey Rose Company reports that he's received the data that is requested and is in the process of preparing his analysis for
He's back.
for presentation to the board. Taken in combination, the cost proposal from the Sheriff's Department and the analysis of the county financial data perhaps leads us to what would be a next step with regard to this information. And rather than try to assimilate that and provide information to the community at a board meeting, it might seem reasonable to schedule perhaps a workshop that would be noticed and ask the community to come and listen to the presentations by both the Sheriff's Department and the Mr. Brousseau, and get an appreciation for where we are in this process, and then take the input from that to the board for future action. And if that, just let me change microphones. And if that's agreeable to the board, then we could talk about scheduling such a workshop as soon as I have more information regarding the two documents that I still have not received.
No, that's certainly one option, and I think that's a minimum that's required to get the information out to the community. I know this board, or at least myself, I'm anxious to hear what Mr. Brousseau has concluded regarding his analysis of what we had requested from the county financials. Obviously, we're also interested in what refinements the sheriff would provide in a proposal, assuming that there were a means of facilitating a contract with the transfer of monies.
Well,
And what those enhanced services would be above what we currently receive.
Well, the two issues are joined together at the hip, basically, and I think they need to be looked at in that context, one as it affects the other. And the only way to really, I think, do that is in a forum where there's an openness to dialogue as opposed to structure and the rules of a board meeting.
True. And I presume that Mr. Brousseau would be the presenter?
He would present his data, and I think Captain Doan from the Sheriff's Department would present their cost proposal.
Can you give us your opinion of when those two products would be deliverable, and then perhaps even formatted for presentation on a public forum that's not a board meeting?
I'm looking at a time before your next board meeting, but far enough out so that we can give proper notice to the community. So I've asked both Mr. Brousseau and Captain Doan to look at dates in the week of November the 27th, which would give us then time to agendize results and bring a recommendation to the board. I haven't pinned that down yet, but that's what I'm hoping we can do. And if not, we may have to go beyond the December board meeting if we can't get it scheduled soon enough.
True. Okay. All right, thank you for the information. We'll just wait for you to inform us when that's ready. Now we proceed to the consent calendar. Does any one board member wish to remove any one or all or some of the matters 1 through 5?
I would like to move item 4
Anyone else?
to public forum.
Have a request?
No, no, sir.
Mr. Rips, no? All right, then let's discuss items 1, 2, 3, and 5. With exception of number 4, we've pulled that. All in favor of 1, 2, 3, and 5 on the consent calendar, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed items 1, 2, 3, or 5? None opposed? Those pass. Let's now discuss number 4.
Mr. President, members of the board, Emily Gingras, your recreation superintendent, will report for staff.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, good evening.
Mr. Maynard, fire away.
Oh, okay. The reason I called this out is we get these items in here, and we've had some recent activities such as the new 5K. And when I was reading the report, I thought there was a lot of information about what we've done and also what you would like to do that I think the community deserves to hear. So that's why I pulled this out, so you can take your report and present it to us as well as the camera so people can see what's going on within our parks, our recreation, and our facilities.
Sure. This is my 4th year here as in the Recreation Department for Rossmoor, and some of the things that I've implemented is a larger Movies in the Park summer series. We have an 18-foot air screen. We have 3 concerts in the park that we offer. I've collaborated with the Rossmoor Homeowners Association with their May Community Festival and been the liaison between the RHA and the RCSD. Offered activities at the RCSD booth for that event. We've expanded our department to have weekend staff, in addition to weekday staff, to monitor, oversee picnic reservations, facility reservations, youth sports, special events, and we've made a lot of progress with the Los Alamitos Girls Softball League. I came from Long Beach. I worked for 10 years there, planning special events, organizing youth sports, after-school programs, summer programs, and from that, I have a lot of experience in what Rossmoor can offer as well. I thought about elaborating on our summer concerts and movies to offer certain activities prior to, such as wildlife show or something that could be held in the auditorium prior to moving the event outside. We've ran pre-movie family activities, water balloon tosses, relay races, and that's had a very positive result from those events. So I'm excited to offer anything that Rossmoor is willing to participate in.
Can you expand and talk about the Rush Field, how you've talked to the community and have kind of outreached with them on
the softball fields here?
On the softball field, as well as the Tot Lot program you're working on.
Sure.
And also, I noticed in here some ideas to bring the movie costs down through sponsorship. If you can elaborate on those 3.
Sure. Specifically regarding the Rush Park Field project, it was brought to the board as a recommendation by the CIP committee last month to upgrade this field right here on the corner of Silver Fox and Mainway, which would be an all-dirt infield similar to the material that's used on Field 3 at Rossmoor Park, which was installed by the LAGSL 2 years ago, and that dirt has been amazing. Doesn't require water, doesn't require it to be dragged prior and after practice. If it rains, you can squeegee it. The CIP committee agreed to place that item on the agenda from a request from the Rossmoor Park neighbors to offload some games from Rossmoor Park to Rush Park as a recommendation by the board. Mr. Tabuada and I drafted a letter, distributed it to the residents that would be affected by any upgrade, and we are still receiving input on whether or not they oppose or would be willing to have that upgrade on this field. So that's still a work in progress. regarding the Rush Park tot lot. This current tot lot was installed in 1996 generously by the Rossmoor Homeowners Association, and unfortunately at that time ADA standards were just coming into the picture. So the playground was installed prior to current ADA standards and safety compliance standards. So there's a deadline which requires this playground to be upgraded to comply with those standards by January 1, 2014. One requirement is that it would need a pour-in-place surface, which is an ADA surface. Sand is not. So 50% of that surface needs to be upgraded to wood chips to pour in place, to rubber mulch, something that is of ADA compliance. That structure does have, 15, 16 years into it. So we're researching whether or not it is more cost effective to replace the entire structure or just to provide pour in place. This matter is on your agenda for later tonight, to hire a playground consultant who's in our audience tonight. And I'm sorry, what was the other one? There was one more.
The collaboration of movies in the park?
Movies in the park, corporate sponsorship.
With the attendance the past 2 years, we've grown to amazing numbers. The Recreation Department's really proud of the families that come out to support these events. And this summer, I was approached by a couple local business owners who live in Rossmoor who would like to sponsor our events. So we don't have a policy set in place or a sponsorship package for that opportunity to allow them to sponsor an event. So I would need to create that and bring it to Henry and to you guys first. But that just shows that our events are well, I can't think of the word.
They're attended well.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you for doing such a great job.
Thank you.
I get comments about movies and concerts, and you also, on your report, had some interesting ideas of a snow day and pancake breakfast with the RHA, with the Sheriff's Department holiday donation drive. I think that's awesome. Other ideas that you've put in here about senior transportation. I just, again, wanted you the opportunity because a lot of people don't see all the things that's going around and some of the great ideas that you have. And I just say keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you very much.
All right, so all in favor, the consent matter number 4. Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that is approved. Now we go to the regular calendar H1. The program assistant.
Mr. President, members of the board, you may recall that I previously informed you that with the death of Randy Reynolds, our former tree consultant, that I had hired Miss Mary Kingman to come in as an interim tree consultant and to determine her level of experience, expertise, and qualifications to take over those responsibilities. I can report to you that Ms. Kingman has done an excellent job. A quick study has picked up from Randy where he left off, and is basically doing the kind of job that I think is the kind of job that this community deserves and wants with regard to its urban forests. You may recall also that there was a discussion with your general counsel regarding the use of a consultant in what would ordinarily be an employee position. And so I'm recommending to you that in the interest of those new regulations, that we bring Ms. Kingman on as a tree program assistant as a half-time employee, which is the same number of hours that Mr. Reynolds was working, and that you approve her employment immediately to take on those duties officially. I've created a job description for the position, and it's in your packet. And also included is her application for employment, which, as you can see, includes a certificate from Long Beach City College in horticulture, which is consistent with the training required for a position of this kind. So as your general manager, I would normally have the ability to hire without board approval, but since I'm a consultant to the board, I must bring this to the board and recommend your approval of Ms. Kingman, and she's here if you'd like to ask her any questions or just to be introduced to her. Mary, why don't you come to the podium and just say hi?
Hi, Mary, how are you?
Hey, everyone.
Good evening.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Does anybody have any questions for me, or?
Nope, no questions.
Okay.
If Henry says you're doing a good job, that means you're doing a good job.
I hope so. I've really enjoyed it so far, so I'm looking forward to working for the district.
Excellent.
Being available.
Okay.
Thank you for coming to the meeting.
Thank you.
That was my question.
All right, is there a motion to approve the professional services of Ms. Kingman as their tree program assistant?
You have a question?
Oh, those questions, or?
Could I ask questions first or after?
Oh, yeah, I didn't see your question. I'm eyes back here yet.
I
I'm working
apologize.
on it.
Yeah. Who did Randy, who did he report to before?
He reported to me.
But this position is, we're changing that?
Well, for the purposes of organizational consistency, this is a position that ought to report to someone other than the general manager for day-to-day stuff. Obviously, this position has direct access to the general manager anytime that it's needed. But from an organizational perspective, it just makes sense that the Public Works folks and Ms. Kingman work hand in glove. For example, when she has a tree limb that needs to be taken care of, she's got to coordinate with Public Works. When what's the other example I had in my mind that just flew off into space? The watering program. She has to monitor the new tree watering program along with Public Works staff, and so it just makes sense for her to have a direct report to the superintendent of recreation and on that parks maintenance, and to combine the two activities more closely.
I'm not actually in concurrence with that. It doesn't, I'm not sure I understand the overlap between the greater Rossmoor community and then somebody who's taking care of our parks. And I am not sure I understand the qualifications of our park superintendent to be supervising our entire urban forest.
They're learning from each other.
I appreciate that. I just, it does, I'm not quite sure I see the parallel or the thinking of having, I mean, our urban forest is something that's really crucial to our community, which I see sits with our general manager, who should be supervising the person that's dealing with our parks and should be supervising the person who's dealing with our trees. I'm not so sure that I see that our park person is overseeing our urban forest throughout our community. I guess I put that out there to the board. I'm not.
No, it makes sense. It's, I follow what you're saying. I am going to infer, given the possible changes that are going to take place,
Okay.
that there's just some room to help each other out for a few months. I'm going to assume that. I don't know how else to interpret it until the manager is available on a basis to oversee the.
Your general manager has the responsibility to create job descriptions, not the board. You're approving her employment.
No, but he's talking about the reporting too.
But that's the job description.
Right.
Now, if you want to direct me to change the job description, that's your prerogative, but it's my recommendation.
I've said my piece.
We can revisit this again in a few months. Do you want to make that as a note of your board action items for a future day? We'll discuss it.
Okay. I got it.
I feel comfortable with that.
All right. All right, is there a motion to approve Ms. Kingman's services for the district? We haven't.
I will make so motion to approve the appointment of Ms. Kingman.
I'll second. I'll second.
Mr. Casey, any further discussion?
sort of have a similar concern as does Director Rips, but in terms of appointing her, I'm fine with that. I still have a difficulty in terms of the reporting structure, so that's my only concern.
Concern noted.
Okay. So I concur with hiring her. I'll just leave it at that, without the qualification.
You seconded my motion?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, he seconded.
Okay, let's vote.
All right, all in favor of the contract, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No one opposes? All right, good. Welcome, Ms. Kingman. Look forward to working with you, look forward to hearing continually the good things that we are.
Just to share, my comments were about that and not about you. I'm very happy you're joining us, so just make sure you understand we're excited that you're here.
It's organizational.
It's just an organization thing, yeah. All right, then let's proceed to the discussion about the playground consultant, H2.
Mr. President, members of the board, as Ms. Gingras indicated earlier, we've been in discussion, I would say a comprehensive discussion about what needs to occur with regard to the playground. That's the tot lot and its upgrading to meet both safety and ADA standards. The problem that staff has is that when you deal with vendors who want to sell you something, you don't get what I would call an unbiased appraisal of what our needs are. And this individual that we're asking you to employ as a playground consultant is that unbiased professional who can give us and the board and the CIP committee sound advice on what to do. Because as you know from previous experience, when staff provides you with information about a specific project, we often get conflicting opinions from the community and from others. And, am I still on? And we have no real way to resolve these issues without having to compromise perhaps on what might be an otherwise quality project. We think that this service then will give you the kind of information that will lead to a good decision on what needs to happen. As Emily pointed out, we're between a rock and a hard place with regard to that tot lot. We need to resurface it to meet ADA standards, but we may need to replace some items due to safety issues. And if you go ahead and resurface it first and then decide you need different equipment, now you've got to tear up what you fixed or what you overlaid, and basically you have a lost cost there with having done something prematurely. We need to know precisely in what order to attack this particular project so that we meet both objectives of safety and ADA compliance. And hopefully this individual will be able to give us that kind of sound advice and be something that will give the board a comfort zone with making the proper decision.
I have two questions at the outset, one of which I just need to have my memory refreshed. We're talking about Rush Park in this proposal, H2. Rush Park is explicitly identified, but what about Rossmoor Park? Is that not an issue?
That was done later. That already has a surface that is compliant.
Okay. My second question is there a reason why Cheryl Williamson is not available to advise, at least before we even go to the point of agendizing this? Have you consulted her?
She's an architect. This is someone who deals specifically with playgrounds. This is a very...
I understood. I just assumed that she's one that's closer to this than perhaps the staff is. Maybe knows as much as Emily does, or a little bit more or less. I don't know. I just wondered, should we consult Cheryl?
You can if you ask me. If you want me to, I can do that.
I'm just wondering why we wouldn't ask her, that's all. I guess that's the answer that I'm looking for.
It's just, honestly, it never occurred to me that an architect would have this kind of background and experience. She knows buildings, she knows other things, construction, permitting, all of that. But this is a unique situation we're involved in, and the decision you make has consequences if it's not done properly.
No, I think we all want to do it right, but I'm just wondering, she's readily available as a sounding board.
Well, I think we could use her as that sounding board, but I think I'd rather have, you would, I think, want to have the best advice you can get at a very reasonable cost.
Now, Design for Play, they've been vetted in their qualifications, because in the packet, I don't see anything that supports that they have this extensive background.
That resume that you have there, I think, is exhaustive.
I would
Yeah, it is.
say the CV on this is
a lot
quite
of stuff.
extensive.
There's a CV? Maybe
It's
I
at the
don't.
back of the document.
In
Oh, it's in
Publications,
back of the
they even
copy.
have
Oh.
perspectives.
This hard thing is a binder, it's a board.
Oh, that's funny. That's good.
No, I mean, this
Oh, I
is
see
a
it now.
very,
Okay. My fault, I see it now.
this is a huge CV. I'm
Yeah.
in Publications, Perspective of Play in a Palestine Refugee Camp.
Plus, we've already gotten some advice from him, from him pro bono.
I get a good idea of what he would provide as a consultant, but in terms of a playground audit for, I guess it's $750, what does a playground audit consist of?
Why don't we let the individual answer that question?
Excellent.
Is this it?
Come on up
I
to...
was going to say, that price is not an issue for me at all.
And you need an audit.
Good evening. My name is J.C. Bush. I'm the owner and also the consultant that the district wishes to hire.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me here. In regards to your question about what an audit is,
Yes.
an audit is going to be the first time that the playground is installed. And what that's going to do is make sure that not only the manufacturer of the playground equipment, but also the installer, the surfacing company, has all done everything properly according to the Consumer Product Safety Commission Public Playground Guidelines, the ASTM guidelines, and also the ADA guidelines. So what that does is I will look at the entire playground structure and the surfacing, and then make any recommendations that need to be done to bring it compliant. And then once it is compliant, a certificate is issued indicating that everything meets the current Title 22 guidelines for the state of California.
Which would be very helpful in a lawsuit.
Yeah, well, I was thinking that assuming we go ahead with this process and hire you, that whoever we select to do the work, that there would be something in there that states that their work is not complete until you've certified that they've done everything according to what your knowledge would be able to indicate.
That's correct.
It's the right way to do it.
That's correct. So what I'm going to be doing is working with the district not only in the audit section at the end, but from the very beginning in the design, setting up the bid documents, reviewing the designs that the manufacturers will submit or the vendors will submit, and then also making sure that they have all the proper certifications from IPEMA, and also their ASTM testing reports for surfacing. So it'll be the whole process. It will be the whole process from the beginning to the end, reviewing the plans, being here on site when the installation is being done to make sure that the installer is doing everything properly, and then at the end, conducting the final inspection and certifying the playground for the district.
Okay, good enough.
Well, at the end, you say we get a certificate. Do we also actually get the full binder of audit, all observations?
Yes, the inspection is actually going to be the certificate. It has a checkbox on the front that says this playground meets the current guidelines or it doesn't meet the current guidelines.
How many guidelines are there?
There's probably over
Well,
two.
no, I understand audits like from an FDA standpoint,
There is-
and you get this big book when auditors come through and they go line by line by line. Are we going to get a work product, something like that?
Yes, when I conducted the playgrounds inspections for Rossmoor back in April, I did Rush Park and, what was the other park? I can't remember the other park.
Rossmoor Park.
Rossmoor Park. That'll be the same type of inspection report that you get. It's anywhere from 15 to probably about 25 pages, depending on how many components there are. So there's a inspection report sheet for every type of component. For instance, ADA ramp or climber or slide or swing or things like that, surfacing all gets a single report page, and then I go through each checklist. There's probably about 200 to 300 different guidelines in relationship to the playground.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
So are we looking for a second, or this is just a point of
I think we're
reference, or
still
what are we doing?
discussing this.
Yeah, it's true.
I completely support this. We are doing a same sort of process at my community center. Having a consultant work with us is imperative to the success of the program, and then having an audit is clearly part of it, and the prices are very reasonable.
Good to
Not
know.
quite sure how you do your business at this price, but thank you.
Well,
Don't tell them that.
that's actually bringing something up to me. I like the idea of having someone who's independent, but looking at the professional services, maybe I didn't see it, but do we have any section here that he is not getting paid, or he doesn't have a financial interest in any of the contractors or the equipment people that, if we do buy new equipment, we have? Is there any protection we can put in there? Because the whole point is to have someone independent, and I would hate for some funny business behind the scenes to happen. So that's the only thing that I think is missing from the contract.
We can write it in.
Your general counsel prepared this. I can certainly ask him to put
Please add a section that there cannot be a conflict of interest and financial.
That's easy to do.
That's my only comment and request that I'm asking for.
Do you have any objection to that, Mr. Bush? All right. That seems to be a...
Okay. So I guess I'll make the motion that we provide a contract, and we approve it with the caveat that our council will add some language of conflict of interest. So the whole point of having someone independent is indeed independent and doesn't have any other biases in his reporting or his decision-making.
Second.
You can second. I'll third. I'll fourth and fifth.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. No one opposed. Now we go to H3.
Mr. President, members of the board, we have a current agreement with Valley Crest to do landscaping for the district. Initially, it was a 2-year agreement with 3 one-year extended terms. I'm asking you to approve the First Amendment for the first extended term under the same terms and conditions as the previous 2 years with no increase in price.
Anyone want to make the motion, please?
I'll make it.
Go ahead.
I mean, I guess a question first, right? Or do we do the
You
motion?
can make the motion, then have a second, then a discussion, and then we can decide.
I make a motion that we extend the Valley Crest contract for an additional year per the terms of the contract.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Let's talk about it.
He was so jumping on it, I was just letting it go.
I'm just letting it go. So I would assume that by your recommendation that the district is pleased by the services that Valley Crest has provided.
I'm very satisfied. I'm very satisfied with their performance. There may be people in the community who would take exception to that, but there are very few that I've heard from.
Well, I think if they're here, they can, oh, never mind.
No one's here to oppose.
I know, I mean, come on.
It doesn't appear to be.
I don't know of any bad reports that are credible.
Yeah, so.
I'm pleased with the additional work they did on Los Alamitos Boulevard between Hedwig and probably
That was actually great.
Bradbury.
Yeah, really.
They cleaned that up real fast.
One day.
I'm sorry?
One day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had a really nice
Very
job.
good.
Very reasonable cost.
Nicely done.
All right. Anyone, any further comments?
Nothing else.
All right, all in favor of this contract as stated for this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No one opposes. That concludes the regular calendar. Now we go to the general manager items.
Mr. President. Mr. President, members of the board, I have none.
Okay, board member items. Rips, you want to make your record?
I have a couple of things. One, I brought this up about 2 years ago, maybe 3, and I'd like to re-bring it up. I really do not like getting binders with all this paper, and I just think it's really a waste of trees. And at the end of the year, it's got to be costing the district a lot of money, and I think there's got to be a way for us to be electronic, whether we get some laptops that are up here that we can access the information. I just think there's got to be a better way for us to do this, and I really would like to see us try to. We are the tree country, Community USA, and here we are spending all this money in trees. It just it bothers me, and I really would like us to see if we can do a different way.
$500 a piece. Low interest tablet.
That makes sense.
And by the way, I also agree with the materials that we get at the end of the week as well. I'm very fine with electronic myself, so I support his comment here.
Yeah. I mean, if you feel like you still need to deliver them, and give me a disc or something, but I look at my weekly updates on the email. So the other thing I just wanted to report, and Mr. Tabot, I will give you this email that I received from one of our community members who lives on Copa de Oro, that they have a neighbor across the street that is claiming that they just moved in recently, and they're going to cut down the tree to make some construction something or other. And clearly they're stating that they love their beautiful canopy of trees, and now somebody's moving into and not really appreciating what we have in our community. So I'll give you this if we can follow up on that.
Very good. The only comment I have with regard to the electronic media for weekly updates and agendas is that many of you rely on small PDAs, and sometimes the volume of information gets pretty much lost in one of those devices. So, certainly for a board meeting and laptops and stuff like that, we can start the process of costing that out for you, but
Black Friday's coming up. We should be able to get some really inexpensive laptops.
Laptop, just get a tablet.
Whatever it is, a tablet. I mean, I think there's got to be a different way.
But it's district property.
I personally use my email on my computer. I don't use it. I don't do it here, so I don't know if anybody else has issues looking at their weekly updates, but I think we suggested before that also the weekly updates can be put somewhere on a back page of the website that we have access to, and that we can go in there and look at it that way on our handhelds.
I can't support putting it on the website because I give you information that is for your eyes only.
There's not a back area that we can only, like, members only log in? I know that our website, we're creating it, it's got a members only place. And
No, I totally agree.
I just like how we get it emailed. I look at it email, and then the package comes, and it's one and the same thing most of the time, so I don't see the point of having the paper.
All right, anyways, thank you.
My action item, or what I would like to bring to the table, is obviously a few weeks ago we had a horrific crime. And with that, I would like the Capital Improvement Committee and staff to put together a plan on HD observation cameras and calling the right resources and putting together a budget for the CIP committee to review on what it would take. So when these events do happen, our wonderful sheriffs who did a knockoff job have more tools available to them. So the observation cameras, I would like the staff to start looking into that and bringing it to the capital improvement as a project that I think would be very well received by the community.
I think you'll get support from the community for that.
I think it needs to be done.
Nothing further this evening.
I've got a few real quick items. First of all, I agree with the directors sitting on my left that I just don't think that we need these binders anymore. I don't think we need to have packages delivered, time spent collating and the ink and the paper and all this stuff. I think I would really like to see us explore just getting some tablets, maybe just loading them in and just saying this is the district policy and boop, because you're having to scan a lot of the documents anyway, so it could be the district email tablet device, and it's turned back in, and I just think that we could save a whole lot of time and money doing that. Two, I'm disappointed that there's no sheriff here tonight at the meeting. I really wish that they would have been here, as they were going to be here earlier, but I don't see them. Three, this is like the no person. I just want to go on record as saying that there is no reason to scrape the field here at Rush Park. There is plenty of need to scrape a field 1 or 2 at Rossmoor Park, but we do not need to scrape this field here at Rush Park. So when that comes up for a future discussion, I'm letting my voice be heard now. And lastly, I'd like to wish everybody in the community, as well as my fellow directors, a happy Thanksgiving, which will be occurring in 2 weeks.
Next week.
Next week.
Next week, there we go. I said
Yeah.
within 2 weeks.
You could have
4
3
weeks.
afterwards, too. I think the tablets are probably the way to go as far as dissemination of our agenda material for the boards. I can do without the weekly hard copy. I'm thankful for it, the effort that goes into it. Don't mean to diminish it, the effort that goes into it, but I think it's time to, it's okay to break away from that. Yeah, I like the idea of being able to log in remotely off-site into the RCSD's website or a private email for each board member where they can review email, mail, weekly activity reports, or matters that are confidential that are going to be deemed perhaps a closed session we can contemplate in advance what those matter be, or special meetings. I think that's okay to go there. With regards to emails I've received one with regards to opposition of the installation of a new material on one of the fields here at Rush Park. I've read it, I've considered it, the resident knows who they are. At the right time, I will bring it up. Should I receive any more, of course, I'll give those attention as well, but I've not made up my mind either way.
We'll give you an assessment of what those are. Right now, they're running contrary, but we haven't received that many, but.
And then lastly, with regards to the governance issue, I don't believe that the week of the 27th is really a very realistic time frame for the town hall meetings to occur. Next week is a holiday. I believe next week is the 19th through the 26th or so, or 25th of the month of November. I think it's prudent that the board be briefed on Mr. Brousseau's findings first, that we understand that he has an opinion, that he believes his results are conclusive, they point to a particular opinion or view, or we may find there are some limitations and the effort is not completed. We want to make sure that we agree with his opinion that he's concluded his effort, that it is as good as it's going to get and there's no more financial data. I don't know that. We have to review it and ask the questions. Separate and apart from coming to a conclusion, do we agree with what he says based on what he's provided? So I think that's something that the board should consider arranging their calendars if at all possible. If that's the week, maybe that's the week the board meets on a special meeting that gets briefed by Mr. Brousseau.
That makes sense.
Then separate and apart from that, then the other issue is when there is refinement to a proposal with what the sheriff may submit to us. I think this board again has to understand objectively whether they're inclined to go with the sheriff or not. Whether they agree with the proposal, the statistics, the staffing. And tonight we've heard of an interesting matter that is warranting discussion, how that would play in, if at all. And you mentioned something earlier, Mr. Talbotto. What is the enhanced services that the sheriff would propose above and beyond what we currently are receiving? Why is it better? And I think the board needs to understand it and be able to ask very, very pointed questions before we go public on it. I think we need to do our homework before we present to the community high school. It's going to look as if we didn't vet it initially, and I think it's obligatory upon us to make sure that the proposal is refined, the presentation's refined, and that the community gets a first-class presentation, whether up or down.
Yeah.
That makes very good sense.
So I'll leave that in your good hands, and you propose a calendar in meeting with those separate parties as though they're done together, they're done separately, they're done serially. I'll leave that up to you.
Very good.
And I look forward to next month getting an opinion from Mr. Kovacic on what we should do about our parkway trees where we don't have agreement with the county versus what the residents may or may not want.
Very good.
All right, if there is no further matters, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motioned.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned.